Hey guys, Percolator. In this video, we're going to be provisioning the hardware that we talked about in the last video. First, we're going to start with setting up Ventoy on a flash drive and downloading all the images that we'll need. Then we will be walking through a basic install of TrueNAS and setting up our network and our pools for TrueNAS. After we finish up with TrueNAS, we're going to move on to setting up Proxmox and set up the local storage as well as the network for Proxmox. Off camera, I'm going to set up 2 more Proxmox nodes in the exact same way. Then we're going to set up the Proxmox cluster. The cluster as well as the 2 extra nodes are not required to follow along in this tutorial. They're just things that I use in my personal setup. I wanted to go over the hardware requirements since I did not in the previous video. The hardware requirements for Proxmox are listed on screen as well as available at proxmox.com. The minimum requirements are for evaluation are down here. This is testing only and it's not really recommended for fully using machine. These are the recommended requirements, and once again, sometimes are a bit overdone. And for what we're doing, you don't need to have all of this exactly. You do need to have this top line. This is that your CPU supports virtualization. We're gonna go over RAM in a minute. Fast redundant storage with SSDs is the best, yes. However, for this, you only really have to have 1 drive, and it can be your boot drive and your VM storage for what we're doing. This is not recommended for production. However, for learning, it's completely fine. 1 large SSD would be great. 2 SSDs would be better, and a small SSD and 2 large SSDs would be perfect. Or one small SSD and 2 large hard drives, and that's also perfect. You just need to make sure that none of your storage is backed by a hardware RAID controller, because they don't really work with ZFS that well. You can look into the details of why they don't work with ZFS on your own. However, you just kind of don't want to use a hardware RAID controller unless it's in IT mode. Redundant gigabit NICs is great, and 10 gigs great, but neither one of these are required. A 1 gig NIC should be fine for what we're going to be doing. PCIe pass-through, however, does require BT-D or AMD-D. These are needed if you're going to be doing PCIe pass-through. We're not going to be covering that in these videos, however, I may in the future. The next requirement we're going to be looking at is memory. 2 gigs of memory for Proxmox VE services are required. This is just for the hypervisor in order to get it to run. You can run it off of 1 gig, but it's recommended to have 2 gigs just for Proxmox, and I wouldn't really go below this. For what we're going to be doing, we're going to be using 6 gigs for a VM. You could probably drop it down to 4, but in this case, I'd recommend running it with 6. So a minimum of 8 gigs is required to follow this tutorial. 6 you might be able to get away with, so try it if you want to. The last requirement we're going to be looking at is the number of CPU cores. The number of CPU cores can vary based off of the hardware and architecture of the CPU that you're using. For this case, I'm going to be 2 and 2 for the CPU that I'm using. This is because I want 2 cores just for Proxmox so it can run all of its updates and do everything it needs to do, and 2 cores for the VM that we're going to be using. That's way it can do all of its compute that it needs to. There's no hard rule for how many CPUs you need to give to a VM. It's kind of based off of workload and based off of the architecture of the CPU. You kind of need to do your own research based off of what the requirements of the software that you're going to be running are. For what we're getting away with, it's going to be 2 and 2. Some people can go away with 1 core for Proxmox and put all the other cores towards VMs, and you can over provision cores, but that's beyond the scope of this video. On to the requirements for TrueNAS. These are available on TrueNAS.com as well as on the screen. For TrueNAS, you need at least a dual core 64-bit CPU. 64-bit is required, as well as for Proxmox. 8 gigs of RAM, 16 gigs is recommended. 8 gigs should be fine for what we're doing, since we're only going to be using it as a storage server and we're not going to be installing any VMs. The VMs requirement that Proxmox has also applies to TrueNAS scale if you're going to be using it as a hypervisor. This is because for each hypervisor, you do need more RAM. 16 gigs SSD boot is recommended. You can use a spinning rust disk for this if you have to, though it is not recommended because it makes your boot times pretty long. 2 identically sized disks, this is a requirement. Using ZFS without identically sized disks is not something that I don't even know if it works, and if there's a workaround, I don't know if I would do it. Network port, this is required. You need network for your network attached storage. And hardware RAID is not required. Hardware RAID is not only not required, but is recommended not to have. Hardware RAID you do not want to use with ZFS. As it says on this webpage, where it has all the scale hardware guide, it's strongly discouraged to use a spinner or a USB stick. USB stick is very discouraged. I would highly recommend not using a USB stick to boot it. A spinner is going to be slow, but it's not the worst thing in the world. It works, it's just not great. Next, we're going to be setting up Ventoy. You can do this on Windows pretty simply. There's tons of videos out there. I wanted to show how to do it on Arch Linux, just in case anybody needs that. To install it, you need some kind of a AUR package manager, or to grab it from the AUR, it's ventoy-bin. I'm going to go ahead and grab it here, and you just go ahead and install it like you would any other AUR package. It builds, it takes a second, or I think it's a bin, so it doesn't build. But after you have this installed, you do need to run it as sudo. And it is just Ventoy GUI. You can run this in other ways, and it will select you a USB drive. You can refresh if you don't see it there. And then you just hit install. Okay. The device, it'll make sure that all of your data is okay to be deleted off of that drive. You hit yes, and then it does a slow progress bar, and it erases everything on the drive and installs Ventoy. Once it's done, it'll say Ventoy has been, success, essentially. And then you can see the version of Ventoy you have on the drive. Now, in order to move things to Ventoy, you need some kind of file manager, and it'll just show up in here. All of your ISOs can go here. Now let's go grab the ISOs. The ISOs or images can be found at proxmox.com, TrueNAS.com, and ubuntu.com. Proxmox.com, come to the website, navigate to downloads, and press download. It's pretty simple. Once you press download, it'll show up in your downloads, whether you're on Firefox or Chrome. TrueNAS scale, we have a similar situation. Navigate TrueNAS.com, go to get TrueNAS, download TrueNAS scale. Once you're here, scroll down, and it'll ask you to sign up for the newsletter. You can do this if you would like, or you can hit no thanks, I already have the newsletter. Sign up for that if you would like. It'll then pop up a download button if you press it, and it'll say download stable or download RC1. I would highly recommend using stable versions instead of release candidates, at least while you're learning. Ubuntu, we're going to be using this as our VM, and for Ubuntu, you just go navigate to ubuntu.com, go to downloads, and get Ubuntu server. Now you can choose to use the LTS version or the one that releases every 9 months. It's up to you. We're going to be using the LTS version, so I would recommend grabbing that if you'd like to follow along directly. Once you have your images or ISOs downloaded, you would like to go ahead and open up a file manager and just move these ISOs over to Ventoy. Ventoy should show up under the name Ventoy, and once you're there, you can just move them over. This is the nice part about Ventoy. Once these are on here, whenever we go to provision our machine, these should just show up as options, and it shouldn't be too big of a deal to boot these. We're going to be getting into that in a moment. Once you have all your images moved over to Ventoy, you want to go ahead and plug it into the computer that you're going to boot. Press the power button, and once you press the power button, you want to spam whatever key is for your boot menu. In my case, this is F11, so I'm spamming F11 while it boots. Once your boot menu pops up, you want to look for whatever device seems like it would be your flash drive. In my case, I know it is the third one down, UEFI Fat USB Disk 3.0, 3.00. Yours may be named something else, and we're going to be using UEFI to boot in our situation. Go ahead and press enter on that, and it'll pop up Ventoy. Once you're into the Ventoy menu, you want to select whatever ISO you're trying to boot. Now, this works if you want to boot Ubuntu or any other ISO, but in our case, we're going to be booting TrueNAS scale because this is going to be our NAS. Press enter in order to select the installation, and then once you're here, you want to hit start TrueNAS scale installation. This may take a few seconds, but eventually you will be booting into the configuration. All right, once you're here, you want to select the install-upgrade option, and you want to select the device that you're going to be booting. So in my case, I'm going to be using NVMe 0N1 as my boot device. You press space in order to select it, and press enter in order to confirm that as your choice. In this menu, I'm going to be selecting fresh install. Fresh install will remove everything on your boot, and you can select install a new boot environment or format the boot device. In my case, I am formatting the boot device. This screen says all of your warnings telling you that you need to have it installed on SATA or SAS or NVMe or whatever, and that USB sticks are very much discouraged, and that it will erase all of your data on the drive that you've selected. And it asks you if you would like to proceed. Yes, you would. This screen is a bit controversial for some people. I made an entire video about how this caused some issues for me. You can select root and you don't have pretty much any issues. However, it's not recommended. This is not recommended mostly for businesses. You can select this if you're okay with running everything as root, but in my case, I prefer to run everything as admin and just give the permissions to admin that it needs. So I'm going to select OK. Here you'll enter your password, and you are going to need to know this password for whenever you sign in. So don't just set it to something really stupid. That's something that you remember. Press enter, and it will ask you if you'd like to create a swap partition. In my case, yes, I am still getting a swap partition. I see no reason not to, considering my boot disk is much larger than I need, and selecting it as a boot disk is completely fine. Or putting swap on the boot disk for me is completely fine. This may take a few minutes for it to install. Once it is successfully installed, you'll get this message as a pop-up. The TrueNAS installation was succeeded, and you'll press enter. And you'll go down to reboot system. You'll remove the drive and press reboot. Once you've pressed the drive and hit reboot, it will start to reboot the system, and you shouldn't have to press anything to go into reboot menu. You may, but in my case, it should just boot to TrueNAS scale. After 10 seconds, it'll automatically go on, or you can press enter here and it will go ahead. This might take a few minutes to boot on the first boot because it has to generate some keys and do a few other things. Once you're booted, you should be met with this screen. The web interface could not be accessed. Please check your network configuration. Should not pop up. It should just give you an IP address. In my case, because I'm using a bond or a link aggregation, I have this issue pop up. So in my case, I'm going to go to configure networks interface, press 1. I'm going to press N for new. Then we're going to do select type. The type that we're going to do is not a bridge. We're going to go down to link aggregation, press spacebar. Then once we have that selected, we're going to go down here to name. We're going to name it bond 0 since it is going to be a bonded link. Press tab, go down to OK. You can use arrows or tab to navigate. Description we're going to skip. IPv4 DHCP we're going to skip. IPv6 auto we're going to skip. Alias, this is where the IP address will go. So it will be 192.168.0.11/24 in our case. This can be whatever you need it to be set to, or you can set up DHCP. It's up to you. We're going to press OK. Then we're going to lag protocol. The lag protocol we're going to be using is LACP. Lag ports, we're going to select both of our NICs, both of these. We're going to go down to each, make sure that's selected with space, and then go down to OK, press enter. Once this is done, we should be good. The rest of the information should get from my switch automatically. We should be able to press save. We should see that we have an alias there. Press A to apply them. Once they are applied, we should be able to press P to set them as persistent. Once they are persistent, we should be able to press quit to get out of this. And then we should be able to either reboot the system. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and reboot. Would you like to confirm your reboot? You press Y and then enter. Once it's rebooted, we should have our IP address now. Now, as you can see, we have our web user interface, and it is available at the IP address listed up here. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the other scene, and we're going to go ahead and bring up Firefox so I can show you that it is working. And as you can see, we get the TrueNAS UI, and from here we will log in as admin, and we shall enter the password that we set up earlier. So I can type. And then, as you can see, we are set up in TrueNAS scale. Now that we have TrueNAS scale set up, we're going to go ahead and check for updates. And in our case, or at least in my case, things are going to fail. Now, the reason why this is a network setting. We're going to go to network. We're going to go down here to global configurations, and we're going to go ahead and set my name server. 192.168.0.1 is the name server that we are pointing it towards. And we're going to go ahead and set our default gateway as the same thing in my case, 192.168.0.1. You will need to know your network information in order to set all of this up. Once we have that done, you can also rename it. So if you don't want it to be called the host name to be DHCP, you can set it to TrueNAS. You can name it something else here. We're going to go ahead and do that because I named my things after Transformers. So we're going to be calling it Starscream. So we're going to press save. And once that's saved, we should be able to do the updates. Unless there is one more thing that we have to do. Yeah, so now we have updates, we can refresh, and if we were to have updates, it would be in here. There's another setting that we do need to play with under system settings. I believe it's under general. Once you're in here, you need to go to settings, and then you need to select your time zone. For me, it would be New York, so you can just backspace this out, start to type the thing, and click it. And then I will hit save. And now I am on the correct time zone. Over here in settings, you can also set it so that we can force HTTP through HTTPS. And in my case, I am going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and press OK, confirm, and that will restart the web services. So this should, whenever we refresh, not work anymore. Now we will have to go to this IP address, but we're going to have to go to HTTPS:/ and then go to advanced, accept the risk, and now we are able to log back into our TrueNAS. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and set up is our datasets and our storage. So under storage, we have no pools, so we're going to go ahead and create a pool. Now in here, you won't have where it says tank 0 and tank 1. You'll just have the names of your drives. In my case, I've already had ZFS set up on these drives before, and that's why it was going to show that. I am going to be naming these tank 0 and tank 1 again. So tank 0, and in my case, since I know what it is due to these, I'm going to go ahead and move these over. You could also import the pools, but since I don't care about any of the data, I'm just not going to worry about any of that. We're going to go ahead and move these over using this arrow. And after we've selected the ones we're going to move over, we're going to select mirror in my case. In order to know how to set up all of this, it's kind of up to you to learn how you want your drives to be set up. That's kind of beyond the scope of this video. Once you have these set up, you hit create, confirm, create pool. It will create the pool. This may take a few seconds. Depending on the size of the drives, I believe sometimes it can take up to a few minutes. Normally it's pretty quick for me. Normally it's 30-40 seconds, something like that. Once you have your pool set up, you'll be met with this screen. The other one, we're going to go ahead and import, just so you can see how that works. We're going to import tank 1. We're going to hit the import button up here. It says import. You go to it, you select what pool you'd like to import. In my case, tank 1 is our only option. There may be multiples. If you have multiple old pools, then you just press import. This can take a few minutes, just like the other thing. And in this case, it was instant, since there was pretty much nothing on this. This, as you can see, is has some health issues, and this one has some health issues due to some failed smarts. These are some old drives. I don't have them to store really any data. I just have them there to experiment with. They are dying, and I'm literally using them just to learn and do dumb things with. So that is why this is bad, yes. And if you're going to use this for data, don't use these for data. But in my case, these are just some test disks that are spinning well enough that I can do very dumb things with and not worry about messing up my two nice drives. These two drives up here are Western Digital Reds. They're pretty new. These two are Western Digital Golds I got off of a friend. So they have a lot of hours on them, and I believe they were used in Enterprise for a couple of years. So they're not very good drives, and I've never really trusted them with any data. That's most of what we need to do with TrueNAS as of now. Later on in the tutorial, we're going to be setting up data sets as well as shares and permissions for these shares. But for now, this is all we really need, and that's about it for TrueNAS at the moment. Now we're going to start with Proxmox. We're going to be booting into Proxmox just the way that we did in TrueNAS. We're going to plug in the USB, go to the boot menu as we are here, go down to the boot menu in our case, and then we're going to be selecting the USB drive. Then we should boot into Ventoy. Once we're booting into Ventoy, we're going to select Proxmox, boot into normal mode. Once we're here, we can hit install Proxmox VE. There's also a console version, and if you are using an NVIDIA card, I'd recommend looking into the no mode set driver and learn how to boot with no mode set. Sometimes NVIDIA cards will cause an issue booting Proxmox as well as other operating systems where you need to set a parameter called no mode set, and then it makes booting a lot easier. Once you're booted into this menu, you can read through the EULA and press agree. I agree. You do need a mouse for this installation, so if you do need, if you don't have a mouse, you can use the console installation. In here, we're going to go to options, and in our case, or in my case, I'm going to be using ZFS RAID 0, which means we're not going to have any actual backups. I'm just using RAID as a way of getting snapshots in case I decide to use them, or ZFS as a way to get snapshots in case I need to use them. In here, leave A shift 12, compression on, checksum on, copies 1, all that should be fine, and select whatever drive you're going to be installing this on. In my case, I have 3 drives in the system. I have the USB, the drive that our VMs are going to go into, and our boot drive. Our boot drive is the one I'm going to select, and I'm just going to press OK. Once we have that selected, we're going to press next. Then it'll ask you your country, your time zone. In my case, I'm going to do time zone New York, and United States is the country, US English. Next, password. This password is how you'll be logging in as root. Make sure you type your password correctly and that you know it, because just like TrueNAS, you're going to need to use it in the future. Here you can put an email if you would like. You don't have to put an email. I believe if you hit next, it will give you an invalid. So in my case, I'm going to be entering my email address and then pressing next. Then here you'll have your host name. In my case, I name all of these after transformers, as I said previously. So my host name is going to be Megatron. If I can type Megatron.land, and the IP address that we're going to assign this to is going to be 192.168.0.14, and we're going to go next. It'll give you a summary of everything that you're about to do, tell you all the information that you have here. You'll just press install, and at the end of this install, it should reboot automatically. Once it is rebooted, you should be met with this screen. That was not the first boot of this machine because I had a few issues with recording. However, your first boot may take a little bit longer. Once you're to this screen, you can go to this IP address in order to check on your Proxmox install. And we're going to go ahead and check that in our web browser. You would just navigate to the IP address, which is, let me check it again. It is 192.168.14. So we would just go to here, 192.168.0.0.14. And then we would press enter. And that should take us to our thing. Oh, I have to enter the, you have to enter the port as well. So the port is 8006. Then it should take you to your thing. So if you have that issue, that was the problem I had just now, and you hit the accept or continue, and you'll be brought to Proxmox. I have an extension called Dark Raider, so all of my stuff is dark mode. Yours would be a bright white if you do not have that extension. And then you have Proxmox installed. Now from here, I'm going to install 2 more Proxmox nodes, and after I have those 2 more nodes with Proxmox on them, I'm going to show you how to cluster them together, as well as set up storage and a few other tweaks that we need to do in order to get Proxmox running in the way in which I prefer. All right, now that I've got the other 2 Proxmox nodes installed, we're going to go ahead and update our repositories for this node. The other 2 I've already done, just to make sure I'm doing everything correctly. That's why there's some issues there. But to make sure that I did everything correctly, because some things have changed since the last time I've done this, you go down to the repository menu, and we want to go to add. Once we're in here, we go to the no subscription. We click add, and now we have no subscription. Now it'll say you get updates. Before that, we did not get updates. It also says we have them enabled, but no active subscription. And we have Ceph, but there's no active subscription. So if we were to update now, we would go to updates, we would refresh, we would get the updates, but we'd also get a couple of errors. And it would say command failed, exit code 100. Now the reason why we're getting this is because we still have the repositories for the paid subscriptions activated. So all we do is we disabled Ceph, and then we disable the one for the updates for the Enterprise, PvE Enterprise. Once those are done, we can hit reload, and we go to updates, hit refresh, hit OK, And now we should get no errors. And as soon as this is over, we should get task OK. Exit task OK, hit upgrade, it'll launch a new window. And all you would do here is press Y, enter, or just press enter, your choice. And then it will run the update. This update sometimes can take a little while. I've already updated 2 of these machines, and it took about 3 or 4 minutes to download everything and to get all the updates done. So yeah, I'll be back whenever this update is done running. All right, once those updates are done, you'll get to a screen that says this. It seems like you've installed a kernel update sometimes. Please consider rebooting. Well, if you ever get this message, it is a good idea to go ahead and reboot the machine. I'll be back once that machine is rebooted. All right, now that the machine has come back up, we have all the updates. We should refresh. We should get a check, and then it shouldn't have any more updates currently, so we're good. It's always a good idea to update machines as soon as you install them. That way you have, you start from a good base kind of thing. From here, we're going to go ahead and work on clustering them together. You have 2 options here. If you're not going to cluster, you can go ahead and work on storage, which we will in a bit. If you're going to cluster them, you can go ahead and work on clustering. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to data center, and we're going to do create cluster. Once we're at create cluster, we're going to name this one Decepticon HQ. We're going to capitalize HQ and the D in Decepticons. And then we're going to hit create. Once you have this created, it will have a task OK. Hit the little exit button, and you'll have join information. Now this join information, you just want to hit copy, exit, and then go over to your other nodes. Now these should be updated as well. I already updated these earlier. So this one's good, and this one should be good. All right, yeah, so now they are. You just go to data center in Soundwave. I am going to data center. We go to cluster. We go to join cluster. We add in that. And then you will need the root password of the other machine. Once you have that, you hit join Decepticon HQ. And you'll get a message. This will stop the service, and sometimes you will have to reload the page. I'm going to go ahead and do the other one while we wait. We go to data center. Cluster, join information, paste in our join information, type in the root password of the remote machine of the peer, and hit OK. All right, once you give this a few seconds, you can go ahead and reload the page, and it'll give you your security warning again. Then you just hit accept the risk and continue. You enter the password and the username that you have set up, and now you should see all of your machines. And do it for the other machine as well. You should see all of your machines in one nice cluster now. Yeah, there you go. Now you can manage all these machines from one of them. So now that we're on Megatron and we can close out those other 2 tabs, we can manage all these machines. Now, having them in a cluster does create an issue. This issue is if you have only one node online, say I take out Ravager and Soundwave because they don't need to be owned, they're just wasting power. Then whenever you have Megatron up, you'll have an error where you're not able to log into it, you're not able to access it, and this is because it can't come up with a quorum vote. Quorum is quite a bit, it's pretty complicated, so we're not going to go into the details. However, the way in which that you fix it, we're going to go ahead and do. And this fix is not something that I would necessarily recommend in a production environment. This is, once again, only for a test environment. So here I'm going to copy and paste a backup file. So that's going to be the backup. It's .new, but that is just going to be the backup. We're going to use nano and then go to ECC PVE-CoreOSync. And then once in here, we're going to open it and we're going to look for the Megatron. Megatron is going to be the node that we want to have on all the time. And because of that, we want to have more votes than everybody else. And in this case, we're going to give it 3. That means that even if somebody else is online, it will have 4, which will be even, but it should be fine. 3 votes has tended to work in the past. I haven't had any issues setting it at 3 votes. I have tested this a few times. But once we have that done, we just go and save it. And then we go and exit that. Once we've done that, we can check to see if they were applied automatically by running system ctl status coresync. And we can see if that was applied automatically. I do not believe it was. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and do system ctl restart coresync. And whenever coresync restarts, now we should have it set up so that it should have 3 votes. If not, a good old reboot will make sure that it does have the correct number of votes. We can go ahead and look at it now, and the way that we check this, I thought it showed it in here, but I might just be missing it. The other way that you can check this is going to summary, or going to data center and going to summary. I was incorrect. It does not show it in summary. It shows it under cluster, and it'll show how many votes it has. You cannot edit this in here, so that's why you have to do it via the shell. All right, now we're going to be setting up the storage on Megatron. We're going to be skipping out on setting up the storage on Ravager and Soundwave because they have much more complicated setups. Ravager having a few Z pools that I need to import, and Soundwave being the same, or having 1 Z pool I need to import. Megatron, on the other hand, doesn't have anything I need to import and has a clean drive in it. So, getting started in here, if you need to, you may need to go to disk and go to wipe disk and hit yes in order to wipe the disk to make sure you don't have anything on it. In this case, it did it really quickly because there's nothing on it already. After this, we're going to be using ZFS. You can also use LVMs if you would prefer, but we're going to be using ZFS. In here, you hit create ZFS, you select a drive, and you give it a name. Because this thing is one drive and it's not going to be very redundant, and it's not going to be very secure for storage, we're going to hit paper 0 to keep us, to keep us a reminder that it's not something that we should really trust our data with. Now that it's named paper 0, you can name this whatever you want. That's just the thing I'm going with. You can go up here to data center and go to storage. Now paper 0, if you go to edit, we'll already have the nodes Megatron in here. But there's an error that I have gotten in the past that I would like to show you. If you don't have anything in there and you have OK, and you have more than one node, paper 0 will show up on other nodes, and it'll have this little question mark that says status unknown. This is because it doesn't really know where the storage is, and since it's not shared storage, it can't really use it. So inside of the data center, you want to check to make sure that you have your drives assigned to the right machine. We're also going to set this to 64K. This is because most workloads that we're going to be using are better at 64K block size instead of 8K. 8K is great for databases and things like that, but when it comes to general VM performance, 64K is just a little bit better. There's quite a few other optimizations you can do, and you can go a little bit lower into ZFS to make some other optimizations that I may make a video in the future. But for right now, this is as deep as we're going with it, and this will work fine for what we're doing. That's all for this video. In the next video, we're going to be showing you how to back up all of your VMs over to TrueNAS, and we're also going to be starting our first VM just as a test so that we have something to back up to TrueNAS. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, let me know how I'm doing on these videos, and I'll catch you next time.